everybody, Young Grasshopper here. Welcome to the Cliffside Bunker in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And this is my 3G40 Tournament Edition run-through. I'm going nation by nation. We're in round 1. And in this episode, we're going to be doing the United States turn in round 1. And let's go to the comments. There's quite a few because I haven't posted in almost a week. I had a bit of a crazy week. That's for another video. But let's take a look and see what people said from the last episode, which was Russia. So I pinned my own comment here, basically saying that I'm always good for one mistake per video. And in this one, I mentioned that the Russian sub could have attacked the German sub in the combat movement phase. However, Russia's not at war with Germany, of course. So it's a good explanation of sub on sub, but obviously in round 1 Russia, we're not at war with Germany yet. Bill Calloway, the movement towards Japan is excellent. Thanks, man. Keeps them honest for a turn or two. I really liked how you explained getting the fast movers being closer to the road. Those seemingly tiny details are what make good players and separate from great players. So I'm not a great player. I don't claim to be. But thanks, Bill, for that. Matt Todd, good to hear from you, Matt. It's been fun catching up on this series this week in YG. Thanks for always great content. Thanks, Matt. Matt Todd is responsible for a lot of the card decks. His help has been really instrumental when it comes to card decks out there, whether it's for my tournament edition or BBR and other types of card decks. EMG Logic, love the videos, great work. How about moving the 2 Russian planes to the Chinese stack? Could that be an idea? They can still hit Manchuria if needed. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's an option, putting the 2 Russian aircraft there. Either or I think works good. Christopher Wilson says, I previously thought the China token was a must get for Japan, but after watching this turn I see that it's very defendable. I mean, the Russian content in China is a must, in my opinion, to avoid that China token going down early. Thanks, Christopher. The Gorb, bold to declare war on Japan with no incentive. I would have waited until turn 2. Side note, and something I have to add is that I think Russia and China were done pretty poorly in Axis and Allies from the first game to the last. Yeah, I could hit the read more here, but just to say that there's really no consequences to Russia declaring war on Japan turn 1. If somebody can think of something that would be a consequence, just add it in the comments. Charles Michalek, I think it would be helpful for the US video to explain to viewers the Japanese move and the risk and benefits of building 100% Pacific. Yeah, absolutely, we're going to get into that. There's a lot to go through here, so I'm going to blow through as many as possible. Drew Landis, nice video. I agree with the take of helping China as much as possible without losing anything in the West, but I feel like the buy could have been optimized. So yeah, I mean, as far as the Russian purchases, there's a lot of great ideas out there, guys. You know, I tried to take a little bit from everybody's ideas, but as far as the tactical bomber purchase, that's my own little caveat. Maybe not the best way to spend $11 turn 1, but that's an option. Peter Mangro, oh yeah, he was talking about Mao or Mao. Don't know how to pronounce it. When I did all my reading, my World War II history reading, I was very enthralled with the Atlantic theater of war more than the Pacific and what was going on in Asia. So a lot of my reading is about the Third Reich and the Hood and Bismarck battles, and you know, I didn't really dive into the Pacific theater that much, so I do know of that communist leader though through just watching films, and you know, again, William Hill about the communist leader of China. Robert Steiner, General Akbar, would say it's a trap. The 12 Russians in a war. Yeah. What else does he say? Oh, he's talking about the US move. We're going to get into that. And finally, Tyrell Lunches seems to me that the tournament edition rules make for a very European-sided game for the Axis. If they are successful in Sea Lion, they should be able to take Africa. UK is now useless. And then having 6 victory cities, actually it's 7, but use their transports to take the northern city of Russia. Yeah, good strategies for Germany, but he replied here, he reread the rules on Axis and Allies, and he sees that there are more national objectives given to the UK, which should help hold off Sea Lion and whatnot. We did what we could when it came to balancing the game. We're not prepared to do anything more for the Allies. For those that have been following the development of these house rules for my tournament structure, you're going to find that with the combined UK down here and their national objectives, and the new national objectives for the UK Europe over here, is pretty hefty. And a lot of great players may say it's still Axis favored, but the majority of players feel like the Allies have too much. And if that's the case, we just need to get better and stronger and refine our strategies when it comes to the Axis and get on par with more people that are saying it's still Axis favored. So we are in America, and let's go to our stage card here, and we're going to get into nothing there. Down here, 4, I got a stack. We're going to get into purchases. Now there's a lot going on when it comes to purchases, so I'll be right back and I'll show you what I purchased and I'll explain it. Okay guys, so didn't mean to blow by through so many comments. Robert Steiner's here, for example. He's showing us unit by unit, move by move, his suggestions of what he might do with the US in this turn. And just thanks to everybody with their comments and suggestions. I'm going to show you what I've got planned for the US in turn 1 here. I'll go over my purchases in a second, but let's talk about the United States. It's my belief that if they're neutral power to begin their first turn, whether it's out of box or this tournament edition, it's all about logistical purchases, in my opinion. So logistics, right? Supply, just making sure you have the right units for everything. Now, right now up here, we're dealing with a German submarine, and this German submarine could come in and hit these boats. I mean, it's highly unlikely, but when we ever see something like this, we must always at least put 1 destroyer in there. It's the destroyer that's going to allow for a scramble and whatnot. The idea of going in to take out a cruiser and a transport to bring them into the war probably is not wise, but it could happen, and we don't want to lose 2 valuable boats. So my philosophy with the United States is no unit wasted. Sometimes when you have a lot of money and a powerful nation like the US, the mindset is to just attack, go all out, beef up, buy those big expensive units, go after the fleets and everything. But in my experience, I've noticed that come round 4, 5, and 6, you could find yourself in a very, very desperate position as the United States, just because your production hubs are so far away from the action. It's so rare that US rolls dice in this game on a consistent basis. I mean, there's the turns in which you're not at war, and that's more emphasized in this tournament edition. All kinds of reasons to leave the United States out of the war. But when I mean no unit wasted, I mean just throwing it away at something. Now, here in Tournament Edition, there's a lot of sacrificing of units. I get that, because you want to prevent tokens from falling. You want to get tokens, and sometimes it will require a lot of units just to get one token, and you're fine throwing them all away if you can score that goal. And that's the way to play this Tournament Edition, this G40. All right. Now, someone recently commented that a lot of what's explained in this video doesn't really matter when it comes to the out of box and the way it's meant to be played. I would disagree, just simply because, you know, if you take a look at positioning, we're not really going for tokens this early, but we're positioning for them. But I could venture to say that a lot of this stuff that you see here could very easily translate into out of box. I mean, obviously the order of play in this combined UK Pacific is not going to factor in, but a lot of what I'm talking about and some of the strategies and movements, I'm sure many people can get something out of it. And just like in this video with the United States, I'm going to emphasize logistical purchases, and I always like to feel like I'm ready to go. Now, it's highly unlikely that the Axis are going to bring the United States into the war, but we have to be prepared in case it happens. If we are brought into the war, we don't want to be left with units wasted, and I'll explain a little bit. Now, there's the idea of wasting units in a battle, and there's an idea of wasting units as in they just can't move. And this is why I'm purchasing these. First and foremost, we have to recognize the fact that we can only purchase 9 units. So we have 3 minor industrial factories that we can purchase and build a maximum of 9 units, and I have 9 here. I have to check, just simply because, you know, I make a mistake almost each video. But there's a method to my madness here, okay? And yes, in the Tournament Edition, there's a lot of emphasis on boots on the ground for the United States. How is the United States going to help the Allies in an 8-round game, especially if they're kept out of the war for 4 of those rounds, max time? Well, a lot of people have concerns about this, but the United States, if they focus first turn, second turn while they're neutral, making the proper purchases, they can get themselves into position later to help get not just 1 token, maybe 2 tokens, maybe even 3. We want to put ourselves in a position to not only defend our own islands, the Axis Pacific token, which states that the Axis control all 8 originally controlled American islands. We want to defend against that, but we also want to position that later in the game we'll be in a good spot to take all 8 originally controlled Japan islands. Also, from Caroline Islands, the Asia token becomes very possible, because the Asia token for both sides requires Shanghai, Hong Kong, Malaya, and Calcutta. Now, if the UK Pacific is doing very well, they can keep Calcutta, obviously. They can hold Malaya. And then from the Caroline Islands, a good landing force can take 2. Now, we can even get some help from transports from Sydney to sneak in, grab 1. Now, I know the order of play doesn't really emphasize that, but if the Americans grab, say, Shanghai, and then later the UK Pacific come in and grab Hong Kong, the Asia token does not seem so impossible. And as the Japan player, you got to be aware of this. Now, obviously, we're not going to strategize or think about getting the allied China token. I mean, if things go horribly wrong for Japan throughout the game, then yeah, I've seen the China token for the allies get taken. But there's more than enough to do for America to help the allies, not just help the allies get tokens, but just outright get them themselves. I mean, for example, a large landing force here comes here. Not only do they help with the Africa token by landing in Malta and taking a few territories, you know, obviously we're talking about later game, the second half of the game. And I've been telling people, and think about it this way, the first half of the game is the Axis chance to get tokens. And come round 5 in the second half of the game, it's the Allies' chance now, because they should be positioned. They should know how much they're down. They should know which tokens are available to them. And a large landing force here not only could help them get the Africa token, but it could also help them land in Rome. And with one shot, land in Rome if it's not defended well and get a token, or even come here, land in Yugoslavia, get Greece, get Crete. Of course, it requires Brazil and others, but those are tokens that are achievable for an America that is left out of the war a long time. A lot of people say, well, America becomes useless in an 8-round game. Now, America is going to have difficulty in the first half of the game if they're left out of the war, but the player assignments, and again, we're talking about a tabletop game, a tournament tabletop game with 4 players. The player playing America is also going to be playing the UK Pacific and is also going to be playing China. So it's not going to be a boring game for the individual player that gets America. They're going to have plenty to do. They're going to have tons of responsibility. However, America as a nation, a playable nation, may be left out of the war, making it feel like it's neutralized, nerfed, right? But I'm telling you, come round 6, come round 7, America can do a lot to help the allies not just get 1 but 2 tokens, and it all depends on how you begin the game. You must purchase properly. You must put yourself in position not only to defend, because you should be thinking about defending your islands because there's transports here, and you should be thinking about maybe helping Sydney if there's a play down here. But if you lose a token in the Pacific early, it doesn't mean that you can't get it back with America doing the heavy lifting. Now let's take a look at the purchases, okay? Now, I'll tell you my reasoning behind this. I've got a submarine and 2 infantry for San Francisco, and I've got a destroyer, 4 transports, and 1 infantry for the Washington side. There's 2 factories over there. I'm keeping a buck back. Now, we could obviously take one of these transports and turn it into another destroyer with our buck back. But we want to think about what's already on the board, and we're going to make purchases complementing what's already on the board. Let's take a look. We have 1 transport. The destroyer is going to help us make sure that we don't lose that. And again, it's highly unlikely that the single sub comes in here. But let's get that transport, that destroyer on the board early anyway. So with 1 transport, we know we've got this heavy passenger here with an infantry, so we can fill 1 boat, so that's taken. Now we also start with a single infantry, but we got 1, 2, 3, 4 heavy passengers. We can only pair it with 1. Let's say it's a tank, and we got 3 heavies left. All right, so we need to project this, and I'm not even sure if I did this properly, but I got 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 infantry. So 4 more transports on this side is going to make a total of 5. So we know that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 heavy passengers to fill our 5 transports that will be sitting here. But we need 1, 2, this will make 3, and over on the other side, we're going to push these 2 infantry here this way in our non-combat movement. We'll take a look at that. That's going to fill up all these boats. We're going to have full transports, not just the ones we purchased, but the one that's still left on the board. And to tell you the truth, I would rather have 5 fully loaded transports ready to go round 2 if I'm brought into the war. And the threat of that coming here is significant, rather than having some infantry or some mechanized not supported with a boat. Maybe I buy 3 destroyers here because I feel stronger with 3 destroyers, but if we're going to be wise, we want to fill up our transports right from the get-go. And this is what I'm talking about when I suggest using your time as a neutral power to prepare for war, okay? Now, let's get into our non-combat movement, right? So again, our purchases, and I'm placing this submarine on that side of the board. And these 2 infantry on that factory are going to replace the 2 infantry that we're moving over into central United States. We have 1 IPC remaining. All right. And this submarine could be transport, but we've already got the transports we need over there, and I'll show you. But this submarine is good for countering because of our movements that we're going to make. So I'll be right back and I'll show you the non-combat. All right, let's just check out the stage card to make sure that, you know, we've purchased our new units. Yeah. We cannot make a declaration of war. Therefore, we cannot make a combat movement because we are a neutral power. So we're going to go straight into our non-combat movement. There was no combat to resolve. So non-combat movements, be right back. Okay guys, so I have finished my non-combat movement. Let's take a look here. So you can see that I've beefed up the Hawaiian Islands, and even though the odds might not look good, and you guys can use the battle calculator, I'll do a close-up there. You can calculate that versus this. I've got a 3-plane scramble. So 1 fighter came from Western down here. All the muscle ships combined with the Pearl Harbor fleet. I brought the bomber from Central as well. I left the 2 infantry there. And I brought the transport up along with the one that was already stationed in that sea zone. And I took the 2 infantry from here and moved them into Central. So I still have an artillery, a mechanized infantry, and those 2 AA guns along with those 2 transports. And the reason why I do this is because even though I said no unit wasted for the Americans, this is not a waste. This is just America's desire to be in the war. And we want to be in the war early so we can negate that Africa token over there. Now, the Philippines destroyer came here just to act as a blocker. If there is a declaration of war on the Pacific Allies, this will block so that these units don't just simply ignore that transport and come in and combine with this. So they would have to stop here, and there's no naval base, so 1, 2, 1, 2. So we're protecting this, and I've got an American submarine there as well. Now, I don't have a 3-plane scramble, but if they do want to come for Sydney, that's going to slow them up. Alright. Now, my fighter went to Guam, and they can go ahead and try and take that out. I'm trying to get it to safe territory to be in the fight later in the game. Now, I understand about the Pacific Islands, but if we count the transports, 1, 2, wait a minute, 1, 2, oh, there's one over here. And then these 3 are 6. It's not enough to take the American Islands next turn, and especially we're beefed up here. Now, if they make this an amphibious assault, they're going to use a lot of transports to try and take out Honolulu. And there's going to be lots of American islands still safe. So this fighter goes to Guam. They could try and take Guam, but again, that would bring them into the war, and that's what we want. So we're sacrificing units to try and get into the war. Now, in other cases, let's say there's a lot of transports here. Sometimes we may have to sacrifice our own transports to land in Midway, to land in Wake, to land in Johnson Island while we're neutral, because if the Japanese get 8, 9, 10 transports on the board while we're neutral, we have to be careful and mindful to start landing some troops or just stack Hawaii really high. I would suggest going ahead and landing and stacking just to make sure you're protecting that token. You can do it while you're neutral if you buy the transports. Okay, if you ignore the Pacific and then Japan puts down a couple more transports, you're in trouble, because any transports you put to help defend these islands are a turn away. So that's why I did that. Let's look over here now. And we moved the 2 infantry, like I said, from western United States into central. And I swapped, this tank went forward and this artillery went back. Simply because I like my artilleries in the Pacific for island hopping, and I like my tanks in Morocco when it's time to go. Now, we may not be able to get this over there if we're brought into the war, and we need to get those transports and go. So the 2 infantry that I purchased are going to be placed here. So we've got 2 loaded boats, and this is what I'm trying to get at when I talk about logistical purchases. Even though you're neutral, it doesn't mean you're out of the game. You can do smart things while you're neutral so that when you are brought in, you are very well prepared. One thing that kind of irks me is when a teammate is brought into the war turn 2 or turn 3 and their transports aren't fully loaded, so when they go half loaded, or infantry or tanks are left behind because there's no capacity on the transports that they did buy because they were busy buying destroyers or subs, you know, with all that money. We have money, we want to be smart with it. So we've done our non-combat movement. We're going to go ahead and place our units. So let me just start by taking these 3 units on this minor industrial complex. We're going to put a submarine and 2 infantry. The submarine is here just in case Japan tries this, and let's say they're left with a damaged capital ship. The submarine's here to help with that. A lot of people might think it's not enough, but if we don't scramble or there's no amphibious assault, we'll have the bomber along with the submarine to fight any damaged capital ships that may be left over from a Japan win in Pearl Harbor. And we'll be at war, so that factory will turn into a major industrial complex, and we'll be able to fight that off. So right here, this is great. We've got 2 loaded transports ready to go if we have to. All right, now we can get really creative with our purchases in round 2 and round 3, but we want to make sure everything, you know, I mean, obviously a lot of people want a carrier purchase, and I'm okay with that too. Carrier purchase to help with some of these fighters, that's a logistical purchase as well. So a carrier is a good logistical purchase just because we start with more fighters than we have carriers. For example, this. Now I kind of want to leave this here just in case this happens. If you were to peel this off and take it to the other side, I would completely agree with that, especially if we're dealing, you know what, let's do it. I mean, we've got a destroyer at 2 and a cruiser at 3. All right. And that would bring us into the war. So we're fine with that. We're fine with losing 3 boats, and we could possibly survive the transport against this 1 at 2 if we have the destroyer that we just purchased plus the cruiser. So let's take this plane and let's allow it to be in the fight if necessary. We'll put it right there in case there is that shot. So a bomber, a sub, and a fighter coming in to help clean up anything that might be left over from a Japanese attack. But again, that's going to bring America into the war. That's good news for us. Well, why is it good news? Let's take a look. Let's place that destroyer talked about. We have, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right. So we have filled our production capacity. We can't go over 9 total units. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's look at our infantry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's look at our heavy passengers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 loaded transports with this and this. You know what? Let's bring that fighter back. Because if I'm Germany, I would probably try that. And as much as being in the war is nice, losing 5 transports is not. So let's put that fighter back there. So now we have the scramble to protect all that. So we have our 5 fully loaded transports ready to go. That's a good logistic strategy. All right. Now, is it likely that we're brought into the war turn 1? No, it's probably not likely at all, but we're ready. Now we can get creative on turn 2 purchases. We can buy a carrier. We can buy a bomber. But we've complemented all of our starting units with newly purchased units that they all work together. They're all pulling in the same direction. All of our transports are loaded, and now we have a clean slate to just start building any way we want, because we don't want those starting units to go to waste because of ill-advised purchases. Now, if Japan attacks that fleet because it's so juicy, and to get rid of that much American hardware is tempting, then we're going to have the ability to come here and negate that Africa token. It looks like the Africa token is sewn up. It'll only take 2 rounds at the most. And then that falls and it's 1-0 Axis. But if we're brought into the war, we're ready. We're ready to negate that. And that's helping. That is helping. If we're out of the war for 4 turns, we're prepared for that second half of the game. We're prepared to get jumping on islands. We're prepared to start sinking some units and helping by taking Hong Kong or Shanghai, jumping on some islands, being a pest. Even if you think that you only got 4 transports, but you have 8 islands to jump on 4 islands. That's all going to pay off, especially if Japan ignores it. Alright? So that's my non-combat movements. That's my purchase new units. And you can do the math in the battle calculator on that and make a comment if you like. I'm fine taking out half, if not more, the Japanese fleet this early, especially if it means getting me into the war. And we don't move at all on the income tracker. And we're going to collect our income. And it's the same, so I'm going to keep all this. Now I had a buck back, so I'm going to give myself $1. And now that we've taken care of that business of loading our transports and being prepared, if for whatever reason we are brought into the war, we can now get creative with our second round purchases, start to show our hand as to whether we're going to build more in the Atlantic or the Pacific. But it's difficult when you only have the 3 minor industrial complexes. Your hands are tied with that restriction. All right. I hope that was helpful, guys. If you think that I could have used these in a different way or could have made different purchases, especially maybe compare Robert's notes from the Russia video and see how it differs. But I'm comfortable as the US now. I feel comfortable, and I know that I'm getting myself ready to help my teammates, because we're going to probably see an Axis token fall or 2 before we enter the war. But that's okay. The second half of the game is our time to shine as the Americans. But we're not going to be able to if we don't have the right units on the board in the right position. Okay? Well, cheers, guys. Really appreciate you following along. Sorry for the long wait on this one. I will be back with France. So to finish up round 1, France. Thanks. Take care. May all your rolls be ones. Hey everybody, Young Grasshopper here. I'm just going to do France now at the end of this clip. I was going to do a whole video talking about them, but it's not really necessary. So I'm going to tag it to the end of the America round clip. They're the last to go before round 2. And to tell you the truth, there's not much they can do. So let's go into our stage cards like we should always do. No, 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 maybe. So I'm just going to go with my gut here, and I'm just going to take a unit. I'm going to come up here to Holland. Might be a good idea, might be a bad idea. Nevertheless, now I did think about coming in here, but that's 2 at 1 against 2 at 2 and 1 at 3, and it's just too easy. They've had an easy time already, the European Axis powers. So that was my only combat movement. I'm going to now do non-combat, and that goes there. This is interesting. We have to think about where the UK Pacific wants to go, and it might want to go here or here in case it's needed because of an Axis attack on Cairo. Let's put it there, even though these can take it out, but I'm okay with them trying, as long as they could try this and land here. But again, yeah, Germany goes first, so come here, land here. If that's what they want to do with those fighters, that's fine. These may possibly go here to help a landing there in Egypt, so we'll wait and see. But when it comes to that destroyer, I think that's the best place for it. Again, use the comments, let me know. I'm just sort of winging it right now. That fighter needs to stay in London, obviously, and I don't think that there's a target to be had to get it back there. Can't reach here. So that is France. They collect no money, obviously. They've lost their capital. So combat movements, place new units, no. Non-combat's done. Stage 3. Let's look for convoy disruptions. Doesn't matter, they don't have any money. Alright, so that's it for France, and that's it for round 1. We are now in round 2. Germany up next. Stay tuned. Cheers. May all your rolls be one.